This interview is brought to you by First Majestic Silver Corp., one of the world's purest and fastest growing silver mining companies.
Welcome back to Cambridge House Live. I'm Vanessa Collette here at the Canadian Investor Conference, Vancouver. I'm thrilled to be joined again by Jay Taylor, the author of the Gold, Energy, and Tech Stocks newsletter. It's great to see you again, Jay.
Thank you.
Now, Jay, what's your take on gold right now?
Well, we're in a 4+ year bear market. It's been a tough sledding for those of us on the long side of the market, obviously. But, you know, markets don't go in the same direction forever. I think there's signs that we're seeing some bottoming. I think gold is certainly bottoming. And of course, I'm looking at it from the vantage point of an American with US dollars. And most of the currencies around the world, gold has actually been rising and doing very, very well. So I think the bigger picture, the bigger story is gold as money. And the question is, you know, what's happening with regard to that? Why shouldn't gold be rising dramatically when interest rates are negative? Nominal interest rates and real interest rates even more negative.
Right. And so there's no real competition to gold.
There should be. I mean, no, there isn't. But gold should be rising. Well, I think it's to a great extent. I think it's a paper game. I think there's vested interest in Wall Street that really don't want to see gold rise. So I think the main thing that the policymakers have to do to keep the dollar as the world's reserve currency and to keep competition away is to keep all the players on Wall Street to believe that the dollar actually is better than gold. You know, it used to be the dollar is as good as gold. Well, they have to keep people conned into believing that paper is better than gold as money. And so I think what you see is a periodic bombing. You watch close to the close in London, more often than not, you'll see a $10, $15, $20 slam of gold with massive paper volume. So the paper markets are one thing, the physical markets are another thing.
It's really two markets.
Very, very much so. I like to call the paper markets that are quoted all the time as virtual markets, really, not really physical gold and silver.
When could we ever see, you know, these two markets, unified or?
Yeah, well, I think they'll be unified when the con game is over. That is, when the big banks on Wall Street who have a vested interest in keeping people conned into accepting the paper they can create out of nothing, the money they create out of nothing, that would be the United States government. It'd be the G7 countries primarily that are playing this game. Not the people, but the bankers who are creating the money and reallocating wealth from those that produce it to the bankers. That's what's going on. So the propaganda in the mainstream media is all about that too, trying to keep people conned into believing that the dollar is better than gold.
Right.
Now there's competition, and I think geopolitically, I think what's really important to notice is what's going on with the BRICS. And you have to realize that the dollar gains its legitimacy only because Kissinger was able to attach the petrodollar, to attach petroleum, require oil to be sold internationally in dollars. But that's coming under some competition from Putin and Russia, for the Chinese, the Indians to an extent, and the BRIC countries now are setting out, accumulating huge amounts of gold, physical gold, not this baloney paper gold. And the physical gold is actually going to the east. It's going where the wealth is. And I think there's going to be a confrontation, and when that confrontation hits, I mean, ultimately economics will rule the day.
Are you talking about more of a currency war, or are you talking about an actual war?
Well, it could turn into an actual war. I fear that it could. But I think the currency wars are being played out now. Within the West, countries are trying...
Is it still a competitive devaluation?
That's what's going on now, for sure, within the West. But I think at the same time, the Chinese and the Russians are very happy to have gold prices low as long as they can
keep accumulating.
They're accumulating, and at the meantime, when Wall Street is happy to think their paper gold is as good as the real stuff, then we're the fools. Ultimately, I think gold and silver too will win. But there's massive amounts of paper that hit these markets that drive the quoted price, I think, way below what it really would be if the con job weren't so effective. And ultimately, as the Russians found out, you can't fool Mother Nature. You can't fool the markets forever.
Right.
Ultimately, the markets will win.
And do you think that the Fed will actually raise rates this year, as they've recently called for?
I don't see how they can. I think they can't raise rates. I think the game they're playing is to keep people believing that they can.
Right.
And there's all kinds of little word games and number games and falsehoods and half-truths that are put out there, and talking heads on the mainstream television that It's a lot of baloney, honestly. I can't watch it because how are they going to raise rates? The mere mention of it, and Wall Street throws a hissy fit. And
Do you think they could, though? Could they actually raise them?
No, but first of all, I believe the market will raise the rates. I believe, in fact, we've seen a big backup, a rise in the long-dated treasuries, first in the Bund in Germany, and now in the United States with the treasuries. So I think the markets are ultimately going to take charge. The rates won't rise because the Fed decides to raise the rates. The Fed will follow the requirements of the market. That's what I believe.
So they'll be forced into raising.
And I think they'll be they won't raise it. The markets will ultimately raise it. They will like people to think they're in charge. That's part of the con game. They want the people to believe, the Fed wants the people to believe that it has some ability to make things happen.
Right.
But I think they're quite impotent, actually. I think they would like to raise rates so that they have more monetary leeway, to ease in the future.
Right.
The problem is they can't raise rates now because we're so addicted to credit.
Right.
And the minute they start, Wall Street throws a hissy fit.
Right,
So,
and people will not be spending as much, they'll be saving more, and the debt will be higher to pay back. But, will the debt ever really be paid back?
No, it cannot
Will it just be default?
It cannot be paid back. Whether it's hyperinflated away or we have a currency breakdown and some sort of a new currency regime, which I suspect could very well happen.
Right.
But no, I think you want to own gold, and while it's hard to go through one of these bear markets, it's a great buying opportunity, I think, also for a lot of the companies as well that I follow in my newsletter.
So what are you advising investors to do with their money right now?
Well, first of all, get out of debt. Stay out of debt if you're able to. You should make that priority number one. And get some physical gold and silver. Have it in your hands. Have it close by.
Would you buy gold first or get out of debt first?
Get out of debt first, and then gold, and I would say silver even more so, because when we're in a bull market in precious metals, silver tends to outperform gold.
Right.
When we're in a bear market, silver does worse than gold. And I think we're going to see a major rise in the price of precious metals in the near future, and I think silver will lead the way. So I like silver, then gold, platinum, palladium as well.
And then the mining stocks for leverage?
Yeah, I mean, mining stocks for leverage, I think that's going to happen. I think the mining stocks are going to lead the gold bullion out this time for leverage, but also because there's some great exploration plays. And right now, my focus is more on the smaller producers that are cash flow positive, that have all their ducks lined up, so when gold and silver rises, they'll do extremely well. I'm quite excited about it. I'd say intellectually excited more than in my gut, because when you go through these tough times, it's hard emotionally to reconcile with your intellect. But the intellect tells me that we're ready for a major run.
Well, I love the theme of your show, turning hard times into good times. And, I know that's the name of your radio show that you host as well. Have you had any interesting guests on recently?
Well, we always have lots of interesting guests. We've had Ron Paul, of course, comes on from time to time. We do talk a lot about geopolitics, and Daniel McAdams of the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity, because I believe that gold is inextricably, as a monetary metal, is inextricably tied to geopolitics. I think that's what the wars are about. I think the wars right now in the Middle East are all about maintaining the petrodollar, making sure the United States keeps Putin out of the West, making sure the United States continues to have and control the petroleum markets so that there's a bid under the dollar. If there's no petroleum tied to the dollar, there's no reason to own the dollar.
And the petrodollar, I mean, its survival, that really is what the American way of life depends on, I guess.
Oh, well, and the dollar, if the dollar goes to zero, or if the dollar loses 90% of its value, then we've lost 90% of our wealth. I mean, it's going to be very, very difficult when the dollar goes down. So they have to, so there's, I have a mixed feeling about it. I'm a gold bug. I believe that we need to have gold as money. We should have never gotten off of gold. But realistically, at the same time, to go back to it would be very, very painful and very difficult. To go back to an honest monetary system, sooner or later the markets are going to force it on us, but I'm not looking forward to that day. But that day is going to come, and when it does come, you want to own real money, not the fake stuff that they're trying to con us into using. Real, yeah, absolutely.
Well, Jay, it was great having you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Vanessa.